Alaska. With a sharp Arctic front at the isolated Arctic 17 weather station, 3 shift personnel, 2 technicians and a radio engineer, stopped communicating. 3 days later, when weather conditions allowed, the rescue team reached the base. The station appeared empty. Inside, untouched bowls of instant food stood on a table, half covered in frost. Jackets were still hanging by the exit. The radios were on, humming with low static. All the screens displayed the same error, signal lost. But there were no bodies. Only drag marks leading to the tree line. One of the rescuers, young, barely trained, found a notebook near the generator room. The pages frozen with blood and cold. The last entry was made with a trembling hand. The wolves come quite close. They are not afraid. One stood at the window. We are no longer alone. No body was ever found. No wolves were found. No tracks. Just silence. Endless, white silence. On January 9th, the rotation crew landed at Arctic Station 17. The helicopter touched down in silence, rotors slowing against a white horizon. There were only 3 of them: Paul Turner, antenna technician, Rachel Drake, systems engineer, and Thomas Malone, communications and logistics. 1 structure. 3 people. 21 days. The station stood 140 miles from the nearest inhabited settlement. The only link to the outside world was a satellite radio positioned on the roof. Temperatures at night dropped below -40. Wind scraped constantly against metal siding. It wasn't designed for comfort, only for endurance. This far north, no one came unless they had to. The first days were ordinary. They ran systems checks, cycled the generators, recorded meteorological data, and played cards by dim lights. They filled out reports. Cooked simple meals. Monitored snow accumulation. The silence outside was thick, but inside they laughed. Arctic monotony. Predictable. Boring. Safe. On the 3rd night, the power failed in the southern wing. The main generator kept running. No faults showed up on internal diagnostics. Fuses intact. Wiring untouched. But no lights worked. The entire block sat in complete darkness. Not even emergency LEDs. As if something had pulled the current from the wires themselves. Rachel mentioned it first. She said she saw a figure at the rear wall, just beyond the window, facing in. A man, she thought, wearing a hood. Paul went out to check, flashlight in hand. Nothing. No footprints. No drag marks. Just snow. Blank and untouched. Too perfect. That night, Thomas wrote in the observation log. Rachel is getting spooked by shadows. 1 bulb flickering. Temp -47. We'll check surveillance feeds tomorrow. He marked the note with a half smile. At the time, he didn't think it mattered. Just nerves. Just the cold. On the night of January 11th, the station recorded its lowest temperature yet. Wind chill dropped below -60. But that wasn't what woke them. It was the sound. Not a howl, something lower, deeper. A long, distorted moan that vibrated through the 4 panels. It didn't come from the air ducts or outside alarms. It came from beneath the ice. At dawn, Thomas found tracks outside the front entrance. Not 1 set, several. Large paw prints, too wide for typical wolves, too deep for light snow. They didn't lead away. They moved toward the station. As if whatever made them had come close, circled, and waited. Paul left to check the external generator around noon. He didn't respond on comms. When he returned, 43 minutes had passed. His face was pale, a thin cut ran down his cheek, eyes distant. He said nothing. Not about where he went. Not about what he saw. He left the door ajar and walked to his bunk in silence. Rachel began journaling privately. The next entry was brief. Paul came back wrong. He doesn't blink. Doesn't sleep. Doesn't close the door. She had started locking her room. No one questioned it. That night, none of them went to bed. They sat in a common room with flashlights. Rachel clutched a flare. Thomas held a wrench. Paul sat near the window, staring into the snow. Outside, something crunched. Not branches, footsteps. Deliberate. Heavy. The wind knocked the door once, gently. Then again, harder. The glass shuddered. No one moved. By morning, the satellite signal was gone. The main antenna lay broken in two, bent at a clean angle as if snapped by force. No storm had passed. No winds that strong had been recorded. It looked like something had climbed the tower, and then crushed it with hands. Paul disappeared during routine rounds. Thomas found his parka still hanging by the door. No footprints in the snow. No message. Just gone. The logbook read, Paul is missing. Outside conditions fatal. He didn't take gloves. They searched the perimeter. Found nothing. That evening, Rachel discovered paw prints on the kitchen floor, leading from the interior hallway to the rear hatch. She measured them. 5 inches across. No sign of how they entered. All doors were sealed. No broken locks. No holes in the structure. But the prints were there. In perfect formation. Like a patrol. Thomas went into the sublevel to check the vents. He found blood. Not pooled, dripped. It led along the concrete, stopped at a narrow duct grate. No person could have entered it. But the grate was bent outward, as if something had forced its way through from inside. That night, Rachel heard a voice outside her door. It was Paul's. Calm. Ray, open up. It's cold out here. She froze. The voice repeated. Then the scratching started. Something metallic. Slow and dragging. A minute later, it stopped. Nothing followed. Thomas wrote a final note in his log. There are eyes at the window. Yellow. Unmoving. This isn't just cold. It's something watching us. Testing us. They made a pact. If someone disappeared, no one opened the door. No matter what voice called. No matter what it said. Not if it cried. Not if it used a name. Not even if it sounded human. The next morning, the front door stood wide open. The cold had poured in. All rooms froze solid. Rachel found Thomas on the floor of the hallway. His skin pale, his eyelashes white with frost. His eyes open. Not dead. But whispering. In a voice she didn't recognize. Rachel was alone. In her final entries, she wrote, Thomas hasn't moved in hours. But his mouth is still moving. I don't understand where I am. There's snow inside now. On the bed. On the desk. I hear them behind the wall. Her flashlight flickered. The emergency battery drained. The clock on the desk stopped ticking. A figure appeared by the door. Tall. Thin. Upright. Its face, half hidden in shadow, looked more human than animal. It didn't speak. It didn't move. It just waited. The last sentence in the notebook was barely legible. Written in jagged lines, like the hand had gone numb. They're right outside. I think they're waiting. Waiting for one of us to open the door. On January 14th, a rescue team reached Arctic 17 during a brief weather break. The station stood silent under 6 feet of drift. Ice had frozen over the main entrance. They forced the doors open. Inside, signs of struggle. A table overturned. Blood frozen across the floor. Chairs broken. On one wall, deep scratches, evenly spaced, too high for a human hand. As if something large had clawed its way in, or out. No bodies. No Paul. No Thomas. No Rachel. Only a journal found beneath the central console. The pages stiff. One corner stained with blood. The final entry ended mid-sentence. Tracks led from the back door into the tree line. Then stopped. 30 meters in, they simply vanished. No drag marks. No dispersal. Just snow. Pure and undisturbed. As if nothing had ever passed. Arctic Station 17 was shut down permanently. All entrances welded shut. Official reports listed the cause of death as hypothermia, stress-induced disorientation, and accidental exposure. No foul play. No investigation. 200 miles south, in the village of Kavik, an old hunter heard the story. He shook his head slowly. And then, in a whisper, said, "If you stay quiet too long in the cold, something starts listening. And if it likes your silence, it comes." No one laughed. Because no one was sure he was wrong.